This is the K1 Max, Creality's large format Core XY 3D printer that I've been printing with for the past few months. Up until this point, I've been fairly happy with the hardware, and the main changes have been quality of life improvements. We recently installed the Devil Burner toolhead on stream, but this is purely cosmetic and not a result of issues with the stock setup. I've primarily used PLA on this machine with a few one-off ABS prints, but decided to print all of the Enderwire parts for an upcoming build on it. This means batches of ABS parts, and it's where I discovered just how warped my bed is. So much so that a mesh wasn't able to appropriately compensate for it. This led me down a rabbit hole of trying different things and discovering much more about the printer than I'd initially planned for. In this process, I found that there are many others having similar issues, trying a variety of different techniques to resolve it. So in today's video, I'm going to share what I tried, what I learned, and the results I got in hopes that it will help others with either a K1 or K1 Max that are having similar issues. So with all that being said and without further ado, let's get right into today's video. Before diving in, it's important to mention that my printer is rooted and running mainsail. Creality has made this simple to do with their most recent updates. The best method for installing mainsail, fluid, or other Klipper specific add-ons is using the community created installation helper script. Getting that script running is beyond the scope of this video, but the documentation is fantastic, and I'll have links over to that wiki in the description below. Having access to the Klipper backend will be required for a few parts of this video. As mentioned, this whole thing started when attempting to print batches of ABS parts. Since these are parts for a printer build, tolerances are important, and I like my parts to look as nice as possible. It only took one tray of prints for me to see that on longer parts, there were sections where the bed was too close and others that it was too far. Given that this printer has load cells and auto bed leveling mesh, I found this odd and looked further into it. From the Klipper web interface, I saw that the deviation in measurement from high and low was anywhere between 0.8 and almost 1 millimeter. Although I've seen worse, this is not great. Even with the mesh being able to compensate, it throws off the tolerances of your parts. So I began looking into options for tramming the bed. The K1 and K1 Max use a single Z motor with 3 lead screws that are synchronized with a belt. Looking around online, one method I saw covered a few times was removing the bottom panel, popping off the Z belt, adjusting the lead screws based on your mesh, and putting the belt back on. This sounded simple enough, so I gave it a go. Well, this ended up being anything but simple. The tension mechanism is a pain to get on and off, it's tough to know how much you need to adjust the lead screws, and when you go to pop the belt back on, it often rotates at least one screw, messing up the adjustments you just spent time working on. Another recommendation I saw was to not fully remove the belts, but to loosen it enough so that the pulleys are able to skip teeth. This would allow you to turn pulleys from the bottom as needed without having the other 2 screws moving on you. This method might work, but I also didn't have any luck with it, and the process of turning a couple of teeth down below and rerunning the mesh over and over again got old really quick. Giving up on adjusting from the bottom, I looked around the bed to see if there was a way I could adjust things from the top. For this, I found that some people were printing little spacers to put under the bed, but I also saw a few that had just printed bed adjustment knobs. Bed adjustment knobs are absolutely something I can get behind. Just about all printers with manual leveling use them, and even many with auto bed leveling. They're a great way to get the bed as level as possible physically before the mesh makes up for the rest of the needed correction. For this, I found a model on printables of bed knobs that lets you use either M4 nuts or M4 heat inserts. In addition to this, you need M4 by 25mm screws, and the creator recommends 9.5mm outer diameter and 4mm inner diameter silicone spacers. I ended up just modeling a simple spacer that I printed in Polymaker 90A TPU. Hey guys, Daniel from the editing computer. I have been testing out printing ABS parts on the K1 Max throughout this entire process, and have discovered that the TPU spacers have compressed a combination of the 105 Celsius bed and the just tension they've been under has actually caused them to deform. The initial plan was just to go a little bit longer, but I completely swapped them out for stiff yellow springs and I have had much better results. Everything else is still the exact same as what I cover in the original video, with the exception of I am now using these yellow springs that I highly recommend, and I will have a link down below in the description if anyone's interested to get those exact same springs. For installation, the K1 Max is easier than the K1. This is because the screw heads for the bed are already exposed. If you have a K1, you're going to have to cut into the magnetic plate to gain access to those screws. I removed the stock screws, spacers, and lock nuts and replaced them with my M4 screws, printed TPU spacers, and knobs. At the very center of the silicone heater is a bump, which I believe is where the thermistor is. If you print or buy a silicone spacer that's 8.5 millimeters tall and you clamp it down, you run the risk of pushing that thermistor or whatever's in the center of the bed into the printer's metal frame. By going 12 millimeters tall, you have a few millimeters of adjustable height, so it's not an issue. With the bed knobs in place, I was ready to adjust them. Luckily, Klipper has a built-in utility for this called Screw Tilt Adjust. This will have the toolhead take measurements above each adjustment point so you know exactly what direction and how much is needed to turn each knob. To enable it in your Klipper web interface, go into your printer.cfg file and add the section along with the location of each knob. The K1 location points are already in the printable's instructions, and someone was awesome enough to leave the K1 Max points in the description, which I will also have on screen. When you save and restart, Klipper will throw an error because Creality did not install the needed module for this. Since the printers have root access on the latest firmwares, we can easily add this. To do so, open your terminal window and type SSH root at your printer's IP, then hit enter. The password at the time of recording is Creality in all lowercase _2023. Shout out to Nastras for posting the needed commands for this. The first has you cd into the needed directory by typing cd/user/share/Klipper/clippy/extras/ and the second one is even longer than that, so I'll just have it in the description below so you can copy and paste it. This will install the needed scripts in just a few seconds. Now you can close out of the terminal window and restart your firmware. Start by homing the printer and then in the console type screws_tilt_calculate to run the calibration. In Mainsail, you can also start this by clicking the three dots in the toolhead section of your dashboard and clicking the button. This will start by measuring the front left as your baseline and then move to the back left, back right, and finally front left. It will then tell you how far off each bed knob is and which direction you need to turn them. I made adjustments and I hit retry 3 to 4 times until I was almost perfect with each. I then ran a mesh and my range was down to 0.3, which was a serious improvement over what I had before. However, I noticed something strange when I was running my test prints. No matter whether I ran a probe adjust to set Z height or baby stepped and saved, the printer never remembered my Z offset. Each time I started, it was too high at the exact same spot. Digging through the K1 Facebook group, I found others commenting about this and mention of using the Creality slicer to set the Z offset. My issue with that is that I don't use that slicer, I use Orca slicer and I have no desire to go back. Well, I saw someone else mention that they found by adding a line in the start macro, they were able to set the Z offset and have it load each print. I tested this out a few times and can confirm it is working. For this, open the G-code macro file and look for the start print section. At the very bottom of it, add set_G-code_offset Z equals, and then enter the offset needed. If you don't know it, you may need to run a few prints and make adjustments, but having this value here will automatically apply it at the start of each print, which I was super excited about. So after all this, do I have the most beautiful first layers ever? Well, no. There are still high and low spots as my bed is pretty heavily warped, but the results are much better than what I have had, and I'm now able to print the trays of parts that I was not able to do previously, which is a win for me. Honestly, what this printer needs is a flatter bed. If someone manufactures thicker, flatter aluminum beds for this printer, I think that there is going to be a market for it. From the pages of comments I read over the past week while playing around with this, it seems that the beds are hit or miss. I've seen some mention that their beds were really flat, while others mentioning multiple millimeters of deviation from one end to the other. Going the route I went with this is not something I recommend everyone just go out and do. If you're not having any issues or your mesh seems to be correcting for it, then there's really no need. Also, if you recently got your printer and the bed is heavily warped, I would start by contacting Creality directly. A few of the users I saw that mentioned they had really warped beds said they reached out to Creality directly, and Creality actually sent them a replacement bed, so if it were me, that is absolutely where I would start. But if you've already tried the above and you're still having issues, this method has worked for me, and it really wasn't that difficult to set up. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it gave you some things to check on your K1 or K1 Max. I really wish this wasn't an issue, and with the recently released images of the K1C, it looks like Creality has made some changes to the bed that I'm hoping will help to mitigate this. On that note, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos. We make a new video every single week, so there's always fresh content coming your way. And if you do want to support the channel further, I'll have links down below in the description over to our Patreon, where there are some really awesome rewards. Huge thank you to all of our existing Patreon supporters. I appreciate each and every one of you for allowing me to come back every single week and spend more time doing what I love, which is making content for you all to enjoy. On that note, this has been Deanna from ModBot, and I want to thank everybody for another wonderful year. The channel has grown a ton, and I have had so much fun, and I have an absolute ton planned for 2024. So on that note, this has been Deanna from ModBot, and I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Peace, guys.